So so great. That's Kendall. Do you want to open up for us?
Yeah, thank you, John. So yeah, I wanted to say welcome to everyone, and my apologies for not being on camera this evening. And I'm not going to be able to stick around for the whole presentation. I have a few family things I'm juggling, but I wanted to thank you all for spending your time with us this evening for GLREA's mid-year strategy event. My name is Kendall Kuhneman. I work for the Detroit 2030 district, and we support building owners and managers in reducing carbon emissions by half from their buildings and transportation. And for the past year and a half, I've had the pleasure of serving as GLREA's board president. I think most of you are familiar that GLREA intervenes in utility cases in front of the Michigan Public Service Commission, the MPSC. We represent interests of individual and business ratepayers in regard to renewable energy regulatory policy. Tonight, we are very pleased to welcome Commissioner Katherine Peretick of the Michigan Public Service Commission. Hi, Katherine. Commissioner Peretick will talk about her work on the MPSC and then take questions. But before we do begin, I'm going to turn it back to John Freeman to kind of review the agenda and for this evening. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kendall. Yes, I just want to say a couple more words. This is our third annual GLREA mid-year strategy event. The purpose of these meetings is to, we've worked for 6 months for the year, and it's a time for reflection about the work we've done for the first 6 months. And so that if we needed to make any changes for the second 6 months, we could do that. But it's also a way of recognizing the hard work we've done so far and getting excited about the second half of the year. We've done some amazing things so far in the first 6 months of the year, primarily doing a lot of education work with homeowners and business about the benefits of solar. We also received a grant from the Michigan Energy Office to do a guidebook about community solar in Michigan. And we're also been working quite hard on a Solarize program, which is an educational group buy program to help promote the solar and by using people's relationships with friends and colleagues. So our membership's increased and we continue to grow as an organization, which I feel is particularly important. So like President Kendall said, I really like the sound of that, President Kendall or President Kuhnman. But nonetheless, we're very excited to have Commissioner Peretick speak. As Kendall said, we have a lot of interest in the Public Service Commission because this regulatory agency has tremendous influence and power over energy policy within Michigan. And these three commissioners are in a great place to be because of all the changes going on with energy in Michigan and around the country. But I now want to turn it over to Rob Rafson of Chart House Energy. Rob is on the GLREA Utility and Michigan Public Service Committee for GLREA, and he's been involved with many of these rate cases. Rob is going to introduce Commissioner Peretick, and then Rob is also going to lead the question and answer period after Commissioner Peretick completes her remarks. The only other final reminder I want to say is that please be on mute during Commissioner Peretick's remarks so we don't have any additional background noise. So thank you very much, and thank you very much for joining us this evening. Rob, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, Katherine Peretick was appointed by Governor Whitner in January 4th of 2021 and is on the commission through July 2nd to 27. She's an engineer and went to University of Michigan for her undergrad and grad. And there's a whole pile of different organizations she's been with and worked in wind and energy storage. And got to tell me about the mission stuff with NASA. I don't know anything about that. It's pretty cool. Anyway, in terms of asking questions, if you don't want to ask them yourself, please put them in the chat. At the end, we'll raise hands Katherine is a commissioner and is actively involved in cases, so we can't ask questions about active cases, but can ask questions about policy and other bigger things. So I'll just hand it off to you.
Thanks, Rob. And it's great to, and thanks for having me. It's great to hear from you, Kendall, or President Kendall. I like that too. President Kendall and I have known each other for a while, including a time we spent camping in the same cabin. I think we shared a bunk bed without heat or electricity in northern Michigan a few years ago. So, more than a few years ago. So yeah, it's great to hear from you. All right, so I think I'm here to talk about what I think you're interested in. Please feel free to ask questions, raise hands, interrupt me. I want this to be helpful to you. As Rob noted, I do have ex parte restrictions that prevent me from talking about any items that are open in any cases in front of us right now. So that would include both Consumers Energy's IRP that is open in front of the commission and the DTE electric rate case. So that includes topics such as the DG cap and inflow-outflow calculations for distributed generation. So when Rob reached out to ask about this speaking engagement, he asked me to talk about the expansion of solar energy in Michigan on both a large scale and small scale. So that's what I will start doing. And again, happy to make this interactive as much as you would like. Or I can just go and we can take questions at the end too. Either way works for me. So my job as a commissioner is to protect the public by ensuring safe, reliable, accessible energy and telecommunication services at reasonable rates. That's our mission statement. That's what we are required to do. That's what we took our oath of office to perform. And I think that solar energy fits well into that mission. And that's that is the job that I need to do on a daily basis. Solar energy is in many cases the least cost way of generating electricity in Michigan. And it forms the bulk of the generation that's planned to be built in the future. Solar also brings energy independence to our state. Michigan, we're a net importer of fossil fuels. So solar does allow us to generate energy, in our own backyards, whether they're big backyards for utility scale solar or, medium-sized backyards for community solar or actual sized backyards for residential solar. So, I think we have at least 90 megawatts of distributed generation in Michigan right now with over 10,000 customers. And I think those numbers are old. I think that was from the end of 2020 in the last report that I read. So you probably have even newer and better up-to-date numbers. And it's only growing, right? That's the starting point, and we're growing from there. And I really believe that, especially when you pair energy storage with solar, it can form even more roles in our electric system and can be a more reliable source of clean generation that we need to provide to the customers. So while it is not our job at the commission to enact the governor's My Healthy Climate Plan, that we're an independent agency, so we take our mission is set by statute by the legislature, not necessarily by the governor. But I do want to talk a bit about it anyway, about the My Healthy Climate Plan. And solar does work to achieve the goals that are laid out in that plan. The My Healthy Climate Plan 2050 net zero commitments mean that utilities need to transition away from their conventional fuels like coal towards renewable energy, such as wind and solar. I led one of the work groups for the Council on Climate Solutions, which fed the input to the My Healthy Climate Plan. So the work groups worked to put together the recommendations, do the work to send up to the council, who then sent the recommendations onto Eagle and to the governor to generate the My Healthy Climate Plan. It was quite a process. I know many of you participated in that, and thank you for doing that. I led the work group that was titled Energy Production, Transmission, Distribution, and Storage. And that included a lot of discussion about solar energy, both on a large scale, medium, and small scale, with topics like, like distributed generation, like the utility scale solar, and like siting. Siting was a big topic of discussion for that work group. And how do we work with siting? How do we find the right way to equitably site solar generation in our state to try to enact the My Healthy Climate Plan. Working towards that My Healthy Climate Plan, both of our utilities, the two largest utilities in the state, have made these net zero commitments. So Consumers Energy has made a net zero commitment by 2040, DTE by 2050. And they are looking to bring on massive solar capacity to replace this baseload generating units to meet those goals. Of course, the generation that they're planning on bringing on is subject to regulatory review for resource adequacy and reliability. As a part of our integrated resource planning process. So the utilities must work with regulators on these integrated resource plans, and that's both with us at the commission, and there is a role for Eagle in there too, an advisory role for the Energy Great Lakes and Environment Agency. And these utilities must demonstrate their ability to maintain grid reliability and uninterrupted service to the customers. So right now we're in our second round of IRPs that are coming up both for the two largest utilities, for Consumers and DTE. The Consumers Integrated Resource Plan is in front of the commission right now. And the DTE IRP is expected to be filed shortly, later this year. And also the Indiana-Michigan Power I&M IRP is also proceeding in front of the commission right now too. So a lot of planning that's going on. These are really important plans that lay out what the electric system is going to look like for the next 5, 10, 15 years, and show the plans of the utility for how they are looking at these resource adequacy, balancing with meeting their net zero commitments, and balancing with cost for customers. So that's been a lot of work that's been happening. I'm sure from your side as well, in terms of the IRPs. Rob, yeah, go ahead.
Just a question sort of along those lines with the My Healthy Climate Plan and, and the national movement for trying to deal with the dangers of climate change. And your comment that they're sort of all of these assets are needed to be part of the puzzle. Do you see in a larger sense, the combination of EVs as storage, distributed generation, community solar, and the utilities renewable energy development? Is it a one or another or everything, a little bit of everything in terms of the goals of the commission?
So the goals of the commission don't really matter, right? Like we have to our goal is our singular goal is the mission statement that I that I set up front: protect the public by ensuring safe, reliable, affordable, accessible energy services at reasonable rates. Okay. So however that happens, that's what we need to keep in mind. Now, with that said, we have there's a lot in front of us right now. There's a lot of change that's happening. There's a lot of obstacles that we need to be working with in terms of the effects of climate change and the increased temperatures that we're seeing, as well as the shortfalls in capacity that we are experiencing right now at a broader regional level. The Midwest Interconnect MISO, the Midwest, what's the I stand for? Why am I blanking on that? I never have to say MISO out loud. Our Midwest System Operator. Yeah. They have a capacity shortfall for the north and central regions for this planning year, and that we need to, while our zone for Michigan, zone 7, was sufficient. We have enough capacity to serve Michigan. We are part of a broader region. We are part of a larger system, and adding resources to make sure that we have enough to serve our region and that we have enough to support our broader grid needs to come from all areas, needs to come from all different scales and all different locations. Our diversity of scale, diversity of generation, diversity of location all helps with robustness of our electric grid. I also see a question in the chat. Did the MPSC ever finish the study as to how much benefit, hang on, just scroll back up, as to how much benefit residential solar is to the utility companies? So I think this is referring to the RAP, Regulatory Assistance Project study, that was commissioned by the legislature or requested by the legislature. I think this started slightly before my time. Yes, that was completed and submitted. And there is a way to find it on the public website. Maybe actually, Julie, if you're on, I'm sure you can send a link to that. Thanks. But yes, it was completed and it was presented to the legislature as well. Our Mike Byrne, the Chief Operating Officer of the MPSC, did a presentation on the report, which there should also be a recording of somewhere if you want to see a presentation on the finalization of that report. I see another question in the chat. So I understand you've worked in the energy storage industry. MISO is warning about resource adequacy issues as coal plants close and more wind and solar are replacing them. Most battery storage systems being deployed are only 4 hours in duration. What role do you see for long-term storage in ensuring grid stability? Is Ludington Pump Storage Facility enough? Yeah, I think that's a super interesting question. And I think that this really shows the direction that the electric grid is going in terms of becoming a more renewable electric grid and becoming more intermittent in terms of the generation resources. So wind and solar are becoming more intermittent, and as coal plants very necessarily are closing down. It is true that most battery storage systems being deployed are only 4 hours in duration, but that is not a feature of battery storage systems. Battery storage systems can be whatever size they want to be. The reason that most battery storage systems are at 4 hour duration is because that is the duration required by California for their resource adequacy. And that has pretty much been just taken as a rule across the country. And it's a lot easier for energy storage developers and manufacturers to create a single offering that's 4 hours in duration and just offer that wherever. So there's, to be honest, there isn't a ton of thought that went into that 4 hour calculation. It could have been 3 hours, it could have been 5 hours, it could have been anything. And there isn't anything inherent about batteries that make them to be 4 hours in duration. So I think that there's going to be a lot more thought that goes into that duration as we are starting to realize that, as we're starting to learn that. And I definitely see there being more tailored durations and capacities and response times of energy storage systems for different parts on the electric grid as they're needed. Now, in terms of long duration, I definitely think that there's a significant role for long duration energy storage as we have more intermittent renewable energy resources on the electric grid. Long duration energy storage, I don't know, is somewhat arbitrarily defined as 8 hours plus in many instances. There are energy storage systems that can store energy for much, much longer than that, for 12, 24, 48 hours. There's a lot of research right now going into seasonal energy storage. I don't think there's anything that's necessarily cost effective at that scale yet. But in terms of the long duration up to 24, 48 hours, there's a lot of innovation that's happening in that space right now. Form energy with the iron air battery is one. There's the gravity energy storage that really can scale up, and compressed air energy storage, which is something that I worked on pretty extensively for years at a technology development company, and actually built a couple, one commercially operating compressed air energy storage facility. That's actually the pictures that are on the wall behind me. Those are some pictures of that compressed air energy storage plant. There are a lot of new technologies that are being developed to fill these roles. And I think that as we pair these energy storage technologies with the grid and with the other resources, like demand side resources also that we have available to us, there's really a way to shape the supply and demand of energy effectively, even with increasing intermittent sources. Ludington is actually something that I wanted to talk about a little bit too. Ludington is a fantastic resource that we have in the state of Michigan. It was built back in the 70s, actually for the complete opposite reason as what it's starting to be used for now. It was built to shape nuclear generation. It's over on the west side of the state near well, there used to be 3 actually, nuclear power plants over on the west side of the state. Now there's one that's operating, where nuclear power can't be shaped, right? Like it's one output, it's a steady output at whatever capacity the power plant is. And you don't need that much energy at night because everyone's asleep, not using that much energy, our demand goes down. So Ludington was built to absorb that nuclear power generation at night, so the plants could keep running at full capacity and then discharge during the day. So it was actually for this excess capacity that was being produced at that time because of a really, really steady resource. And now it's being used much more because it's to fill in the gaps from an unsteady resource of intermittent generation. And it's doing a great job at that too. So it's something that I think everyone loves. I've never heard anybody who doesn't like our Ludington pumped hydro plant, and it's huge. It's 19 gigawatt hours. gigawatt hours. Like it's a huge amount of energy storage.
Well, I mean, I got a quick question for you.
Go ahead, Rob.
Along that path, we're supposed to have like 1 million EVs in the state by the end of the decade. And those collective storage equals about 10 times the Ludington pump storage. And the question is, how does, there are plenty of companies now starting to talk about the bidirectional flow from a EV storage. How does the Public Service Commission, or does it regulate the use of any of these storage assets?
Regulate the use. We need a plan for it. I think that's where we're starting right now, is that we need to plan for the increased load that's coming from electric vehicles, particularly on the distribution system, and plan for these innovative use cases like you're describing for potentially discharging and using electric vehicles as a form of broader energy storage capacity. That's definitely something that we're thinking about. That's been a topic that's been discussed in our my power grid efforts in terms of the new technologies and business models, and the electric vehicles subsection of the my power grid as well, that Commissioner Phillips has been leading. So there's a lot that we're definitely working through that, and want to make sure that we as regulators are not going to be standing in the way of innovation and of these new and creative resources that we could help support our mission of serving the public. Mark, you've had your hand up for a while. Sorry.
Thank you. So my question gets to the question of risk, and the Public Service Commission's mission about providing services. There was an interesting article in the New York Times today about the riskiness to investors of energy companies and utilities. And they used the example of Pacific Gas and Electric, that a year before the $30 billion hit they took for the fires and their bankruptcy, they had been approved to reduce maintenance and things on their grid and increase the reliability. And they projected a risk to their investors of $2.3 billion. And the next year they hit a $30 billion and a bankruptcy. So that's one example. We also have our utilities in Michigan are dependent on fossil fuel companies whose stock value in large part is based on oil, gas, and coal reserves that will never be realized. They'll never dig them up. If they do, we'll add enough carbon to the environment that they'll be the only ones probably left. So I guess my question gets to the financial viability of our utilities. The New York Times article basically said there is no one who is overseeing this at the financial side or the regulatory side at the federal or state levels. Some states are starting to ask the question and be concerned about the financial riskiness of the utilities that in there. So I guess my question gets to, we're about to add, an awful lot of electric vehicles, and one electric vehicle plugged into a house is the equivalent of 5 to 6 new air conditioning units plugged in at that house. The load is going to go up, and our utilities are heavily dependent on fossil fuel companies that are risky at best, given that they can't realize their assets, and many of which are vulnerable to things like what's happening in Ukraine. How does the Public Service Commission address this? Do they actually look at whether or not the utilities are telling the truth? I mean, PG&E certainly didn't. I mean, how do we know? Because we're banking an awful lot on the viability and the ability of our investor-owned utilities to deliver going forward. And if they can't, then things like, making it more difficult for distributed generation and stuff look pretty strange in hindsight. So that's my question. Who's on point on this kind of stuff in Michigan?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and something that I spend a lot of time thinking about. Financial riskiness and the risk that that is being posed by, I think, not only by the transition away from fossil fuels as you're describing, but also the risk that is being posed by climate change and all of the the change that is happening. Like things are not going to keep. We can't model the future based off of the past anymore, and that's something that we've really been trying to dig into at the commission. And we had a couple workshops on this, actually. There was one that was part of the My Power Grid effort, but we had one workshop that was, I thought, just really beneficial. It was in the last fall, at October, November timeframe, as a response to all of the storms from last summer. This was our technical workshop on reliability, and a big part of that was examining the effects of climate change and what additional risk that brings to the utilities and to the current utility structures. So there were a couple really, really good presentations. One was by Allison Silverstein. Definitely recommend that one. This is all again on our website. I'm sure you can find it fairly easily. And if you can't, you can feel free to email, and I can point you to it on how to look at the changing climate and how to think about revising our regulatory standpoint based on how the world is changing. And then one that I thought was really, really interesting. It was a lot more technical and a lot more detail on like probabilities and like risk numbers by Dr. Michael Craig from the University of Michigan about how to assess risk in investments. So which investments should the utility be actually investing in based on what we think the world is going to look like as we're going forward. So and yeah, they're both really, really good presentations. Highly recommend checking them out. But on a broader scale, what keeps me up at night is that all of this financial riskiness that you're describing, that's not on the companies, that's on ratepayers. It's the ratepayers who are backing these companies, right? Like and that's why I think that it's so important that we're thinking about and properly valuing this risk. And I have been just so impressed with the quality of staff at the Michigan Public Service Commission. Like, they are fantastic. Some of the smartest people I've ever worked with. I've worked at quite a few different companies, but there is still a power imbalance between the commission and the utilities that we regulate. We don't have the same resources. We don't have the same number of staff members. We don't have the same number of lawyers. We don't have the same amount of money to pour into these investigations and into holding the utilities to account. So, that's a challenge, and because we need to be digging into this riskiness, and we need to be understanding the proposals that they're putting forward. But we have much smaller resources than they do for when they're putting forward these cases. So this is not what I intended to talk about when I came here tonight, but that's why you're so important, right? Like that's why we need interveners like you, why we need groups like you to put together this testimony, these excellent, like, dig into it, right? Like, dig into it and figure out what is wrong with their proposal, what needs to be better about what they're putting in front of the commission, and put that in the testimony, put that in front of us, because we read that, we look at that, we read that, and that is how we're able to make these decisions. Our staff can't be the ones who dig into absolutely everything. So yeah, I really encourage, if you find these, these areas that are important, these things that you want to highlight, like put that in testimony and put that in the cases that come in front of us, because that's how we see it.
Well, this is John Freeman. Let me just ask one quick follow-up question. We obviously we do get involved in these cases and intervene, and we do the best we can. But are there any other ways that you would suggest that we can effectively share our concerns to the commissioners regarding different policies that you're taking up in these various cases? I mean, other suggestions on how we can engage you all?
So participating in the work groups is really helpful. So some of these, like the My Power Grid work groups, or these technical conferences that we've put together, that's really helpful, is to hear feedback as a part of those. And normally there are reports that come out of those, so it's all your input is documented and reviewed by us and by our advisors. And oftentimes we actually attend the work groups too, so we'll hear it from you directly. How else to make sure that you're heard and involved? Yeah, definitely attending these work groups. The way that we make our decisions, though, has to be based on the evidence that's on the record in front of us. Like even if we think we have a better idea, even if I think I can solve something, I can't make a decision based off of that. I can only make a decision based off of the evidence that's on the record of the case that's in front of us. So even if you do, reach out in other ways, which is great. Like I love doing things like this. I like hearing from you in unofficial channels as well. I can't make none of us can make any decisions based off of information that we get from things like this. We have to make our decisions based off of information that's publicly on the record in a case. Okay. The chat has been going crazy. Does anyone want to speak up and ask one of the questions that you feel strongly about? I want to try to pick a good one. I
like the last one.
The last one? Okay. If the utilities are basically given a guaranteed return on their investments, is it fair for homeowners who invest in solar under assumptions of the current return from utilities, when they make their investments, are open to changes in their returns from the utilities? I can't get into details here, but yeah, I think that's a great point. And again, I think that's a bit of this power imbalance of utilities having their guaranteed rate of return, right? Like they get to earn 9.9% on whatever they invest in, and that's that's not guaranteed to to anyone, not to private companies, not to residents, not to anyone else. So I think it's yeah, that's a tough question. Like
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but
no, it's okay. I'm trying to say what I can, but I
think it's interesting just from a risk perspective that even though the utility, investing in a utility is risky right now, investing in behind the meter solar project is in some ways even more risky.
Mm-hmm.
and it's sort of.
Can I jump in to kind of bring that home? I've had the same sort of a question up a little earlier. I went on with the Solar Currents program, which I think is now 12 years ago, something like that. And I had a 20-year contract. And I was seeing nice benefits due to the net metering and so on from my solar installation under that. And I have seen those benefits decline. I think it was a couple of years ago, we went from, what was it, Schedule 16 to Schedule 18 or something. And I guess you cannot talk about the new one that drops the net metering return even more. But I think that may be what we are talking about. If there's any way you can react or predict how that can happen.
Yeah.
It appears there was a tiny clause in my 20-year contract because I was going to fight it. And when I found that clause, it said something about any new arrangements enacted since the date of this contract change the contract. So it was like, okay, I think that was their loophole.
Yeah, I can't respond too much to that, but I hear you. Can I say that? All right, cool. I want to. There's a couple of questions in here. So if at a state level regulation is the resource constraint, is there regional collaboration and learning? It seems to me a larger area would have more capability for many common topics. Are you connected with your neighbors? And I want to respond quickly to that one. Yes, absolutely. That is definitely something that I have been making sure that we are learning from other states, other commissions, other people who are doing this. I actually met with 2 of the Hawaii commissioners at the last conference that I was at, who have just been really blazing a trail for rooftop solar and for distributed generation and distributed storage too. So definitely trying to learn from other regions. And I also wanted to mention a technical assistance that we have right now at the commission from the DOE. So the Federal Department of Energy has offered up some of their expertise and some of the researchers at their national labs to help out commissions and provide technical resources. And we applied for those grants late last year and got 2 of them. And one of them is on, pretty focused on distributed generation, and the other one is really focused on storage. So we've got a lot of help from these super smart researchers who have all kinds of resources at the national labs, who are helping us out very directly in answering our questions and training the employees that we have at the commission. So it's been really valuable. And I want to respond to one more of these 2, and then I'll get to you, Ed. So Denise said, speaking of power, you mentioned equity concerns. We know climate change disproportionately affects BIPOC community. How does MPSC view equity and environmental justice? That is a huge part of what we do too. We really want to make sure that equity and environmental justice is staying at the forefront of all of the decisions that we're making and all of the orders that we're issuing. I think that is, that's something that all 3 of us feel very strongly about, and we need to make sure that that we're keeping the focus there. So those presentations at Julie, thank you so much for sending those links. For the Allison Silverstein presentation, she talked a lot about how to view equity as we're making these decisions, and how to bake that into the the equation that we use to make the decisions going forward. So yeah, there's clearly a lot of, and also as a part of the My Healthy Climate Plan, Council on Climate Solutions, equity and environmental justice was an equal concern and an equal decision-making point, along with the clean and renewable, like trying to decarbonize, was on the same playing field as equity and environmental justice. needed to be a part of all of the recommendations that we put forward, and needed to be viewed through that equity and environmental justice lens. Okay, Ed.
Yeah, my question was in the chat though too.
Okay.
And I'm going back to the RAP study, which essentially concluded fairly strongly that with the inflow-outflow tariff that's been set up for DG customers, that it pretty much minimizes, if not eliminates, the real prospect of a cross-subsidization. Do you, as the commissioners, is that a baseline assumption for you in terms of the law required cost of equity, cost of service, and then he created the new tariff, inflow, outflow, then separated the rates between the two. They're paying full retail. So that certainly requires customers on the inflow side, myself being one, the electricity that's coming into my house now because my solar panels aren't working at this point. So, I mean, do you assume that the commission has done the job of the 2016 law with, the DG system and the inflow outflow to eliminate any cross subsidization? Is that an assumption going into a rate case? Stump the commissioner. That was my goal.
Sorry.
Let me just.
This is like one of the main points that's in the DTE rate case that's open in front of us right now.
Well, let me just, if I could add an additional point to Ed's question, that both Chairman Scripps as well as Chief of Staff Mike Byrne have testified to both the House and I think the Senate Energy Committees that in fact there is no cross-subsidization going on between solar owners by non-solar owners. So going back to Ed's point, is that an understanding that is the position held by the Public Service Commissioners as a given? Because the utilities are still pushing that argument out there, even though Chairman Scripps and Mike Byrne have said, no, that's not the case. So can you explain can you kind of elaborate a little bit if you're comfortable?
This is like one of the topics that I really just want to try to avoid because it is such a central point to the DTE rate case that's in front of us right now. But I think that those presentations that were given by both the chair and by Mike Byrne are really good presentations.
Thank you, and I apologize if I crossed the line a little bit.
I'm used to it.
Okay.
You're not the only ones.
Thank you.
I try to be pretty strict about it though, because independence and making sure that our opinions are unbiased and that they really are based on the record is really important to me.
I have a question.
Okay. Go ahead.
My question is a reference to your comment about what gets to be considered, and it has to be in the record. What constitutes in the record, and how would I'm not an engineer, I'm not an electrician. I put solar panels on my roof almost 3 years ago. I took advantage of the federal subsidy, the rebate or whatever. And I feel like I'm better informed than average, but average isn't a very high level. And I'd like to know, like, if for instance, if John Freeman and his organization presents clear information about how my utility company is presenting false information, what makes it in or not in the record? That's what I want to know.
Right. Yeah. So we have a quasi-judicial case process that we go through for these rate cases, And it includes submitting written testimony, cross-examination of witnesses, and rebuttal testimony. And any of that testimony is bound into the record, which we can then make decisions based off of. And it can come from anyone. So if you wanted to send in a letter that you would like bound into the record for any particular case, you are absolutely welcome to do that. And there are instructions for how to do that on the commission's website.
And would I have to name the case, or would I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, you have to name the
so
case.
I would have to have way more familiarity than I have.
I know, and that's something that that's something I've been struggling with too, is trying to make this process more accessible. Julie's heard me say many times how much I hate our e-docket system, and how I think it's so opaque and difficult to use for anyone who's not who's not very steeped in the process. So that's actually something that we're working on right now. Is we're still in the process of it, so it might be a while, but we're going to actually put a new web page up on the MPSC website that will make it a lot easier to find these rate cases, or the major cases that are in front of the commission. So like rate cases, IRPs, major things like that. We're going to put them on a very accessible, friendly web page where you can just click a link that isn't just a bunch of letters and numbers, and you'll be able to submit testimony directly to us. So that's something that's ongoing, and that we're working on internally right now.
Do you have a target?
Probably, I don't know it off the top of my head, sorry.
I mean, a year, a month, 10 years?
This year, it should be this year, yeah.
Great, thank you. I appreciate your background and what you bring to this position. And I just want to say that, you're being here tonight and you're helping us see how you see it is really significant to me. So thank you.
Great. No, thanks. I'm happy to do it. I know we're well over time. I'm happy to stay, but I also don't want to take up your whole meeting.
Well, let's take a few more questions. I know Dave and Michael have their hands up, so maybe we take two more and wrap it up around 8 o'clock.
That sounds great.
Dave?
Yep, I'm just curious as to how many MPSC members might have firsthand knowledge of solar installations at their own residence?
That is a great question. I don't know, but I want to find out. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how many do. I'll find out.
Well, we do know that Julie Baldwin has solar, so.
Julie, do you have any insight? Do you have any idea? You've been around for longer.
Well, I think there are at least 4 or 5 of us that have rooftop solar installations, and some of the new younger employees are new solar customers.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
Michael?
Yes, my question has to do with the FERC Order 841 that has to do with storage and equitable treatment of that. And I know MISO had requested 2 delays in presenting a plan to how they were going to implement that. And that's kind of crucial for the implementation of sustainable energy and a stable grid with that. And now we're hearing from FERC that there's going to be possible some rolling blackouts in some of the areas of that. I'm wondering, does that have anything to do with the possible rolling blackouts or slow implementation of FERC Order 841?
So the commission has not been supportive of MISO's delay in implementing FERC 841. We've submitted comment to FERC that we think that they should do it faster. So that's I can't speak directly. I don't know. I don't think anyone knows if that's been a direct impact on the resource adequacy issues that are arising right now. But I mean, it certainly doesn't help, right? But I think FERC, there was actually just an announcement today that that FERC is taking some action to reform the interconnection queues. So this isn't 841, but it's in a similar vein of trying to make it easier for renewable energy for anything. So, but most of what's in the queue right now is solar and storage. So making it easier for solar and storage to connect. FERC today just issued a NOPR, a notice of proposed rulemaking, to address the significant backlogs that are in these interconnection queues. They're trying, I haven't read it yet, but they said that they're doing this by improving the interconnection procedures, providing greater certainty, and preventing undue discrimination against new generation. So I think that's really promising. I'm looking forward to looking into that and seeing what that proposed rulemaking is going to be, because going back to the MISO capacity shortages as well, MISO, there's a huge number of new resources that are in the queue waiting to interconnect. And if these resources are just able to move through that process a little bit faster, we might not find ourselves in the same situation that we are right now.
Thanks for your information, Commissioner.
I would like to ask one more final question,
Sure.
Commissioner. This is regarding geothermal energy, and this is a question from Ron that's in the chat. And I thought that because we've been talking so much about solar, that it might be nice to kind of talk a little bit about geothermal energy. And Ron's question is whether the Public Service Commission has a policy about geothermal and whether they are thinking about it as they're reviewing integrated resource plans by the major utilities.
So we'll look at anything that comes in through the case process and through those integrated resource plans. I don't remember seeing geothermal as a part of that but we'll absolutely take a look at anything that comes our way. We're just looking for the qualities of being reliable and affordable, and and making sure that we're providing the best services to the ratepayers, to the people who are living in the state of Michigan and buying our the electric resources off the grid. So that's really what it comes down to, and whatever fits that definition, we're absolutely happy to consider.
Rob, you want to wrap up for us on this portion?
Thank you for your time, and I think that the discussion was great, and hope to have you again sometime.
I'd be happy to. I like talking about this, so thanks for having me. And thanks for all the great questions.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate you coming on and joining us.
Thanks.
Okay, our meeting is going to continue. We're going to now turn to a discussion regarding our GLREA strategic plan. We have been working over the past year through establishment of a GLREA planning committee to develop a process to think about the future of GLREA and how we can plan more effectively. And so we're going to turn it over now to Diane Van Buren, who is with D2 Solar from Detroit, as well as a GLREA board of director of the organization. And Diane's going to talk about our strategic plan process, and then there'll be an opportunity to ask questions as well. Diane?
Hello, everybody. I don't know if I'm on screen or if it's getting too dark. So I am going to stop my video, mainly because I keep losing contact with, so if I suddenly go out, there is a reason for that. And of course, I'm also struggling right now to try to find my presentation. So since the time is very brief, I'm just going to quickly go through the fact that, and many of the people here have already been in the, oh, there it is. Oh, I just got it. In our strategic planning process. Let me just quickly review what we've been up to. There are several different committees that have been working on their strategies, and it's important to note that see, I got caught up looking at my trying to get it on. Okay, I'm going to stop that. It's important to note that the new grant that has come in to help with the guidebook as well as Solarize is indeed following what our strategic plan goals have been. And it in fact meets the goals of multiple committees. And so what we have been looking at is how it meets the goals of our planning committee, education committee, advocacy, and business development. So many of you remember in December when we went through our whole process of what the strategic plan is that we had the goal development to help with greater participation of our members, but also to give members value. And in fact, we were able to start another committee, which is now the Business Development Committee. So with the Solarize program, that is what's meeting the goals of these multiple committees, with being able to have more outreach and more education in particular to communities around Michigan. And I believe, John, we now have 4 or 5 different Solarizes started, including one in Detroit, actually 2 now in Detroit that we're going to be developing very soon. So if there's interest in any of our members, and this is actually in the interest of time with us tonight, of joining any of the committees, we have education committee. Advocacy is the one that is working on the rate case, by the way. So this is a place that people have a chance to become engaged with the rate case and other issues going on, and the business development. So please put in the chat if you are interested in knowing more about how we're in a planning process and how we're being strategic about our future for GLREA and how we can meet the goals and needs of members as well. And I was going to do 10 minutes, and since we're so short of time, I think I managed to do it in 3. How's that?
Sounds great. Are there any questions for Diane? Okay, we have one more topic I want to bring up, and this is following exactly from what Commissioner Peretick talked about. The name of the topic is public engagement, and we have a challenge here in Michigan. And the challenge is, and she laid it out pretty starkly, that the utilities, and we're talking DTE and consumers, they have a ton of money. They're huge corporations. They can out-resource the Public Service Commission, and they frankly can out-resource us. And so the question becomes, how do we kind of move the needle forward in terms of developing a policy framework that supports the expansion of renewable energy in Michigan? And Commissioner Peretick also mentioned that they are limited in terms of being able to work on matters that are within state law. And so they can't take up issues that the legislature doesn't allow. So in other words, they can't unilaterally raise the 1% cap on their own. And so that poses a real challenge for us. And because then it goes back to having to change state law. And how do we change state law when the utilities are incredibly active with the state legislature? They have a very large political action committee. They have a C4 operation where they can run independent expenditure campaigns independent of a legislator running, but these campaigns can be run either to support a candidate running or they can oppose a candidate running. And so that presents an issue. And so one of the questions that GLREA is constantly discussing internally is how can we be more effective at engaging public engagement with legislators and with, frankly, the Public Service Commission. And I think one of the takeaways I'm taking away from Commissioner Peretick's comments is, and I hope Don Keski is listening to this question, is that she says that they're not allowed to contemplate anything that's not within the record. And I think Harvey mentioned, how do we get stuff in the record? And so one idea I've just immediately thought of is whether we could submit a series of affidavits or personal testimonies from GLREA members about how they will be impacted, for instance, in this DTE case, if DTE's proposal is granted by the Public Service Commission. And I think maybe one way of impressing upon how this would impact people is having someone like David Lau write down that when he invested in solar a number of years ago, he thought he had a rock solid contract, and that's what he was basing his investment in part on. But then unilaterally, the utility was able to get it changed. And so now that contract is no longer rock solid. And so even though that there was a loophole in the contract, and maybe that's a legal loophole that the commission can't ignore, but nonetheless, the fact that if we can get David Lau to maybe submit something into the record about how there wasn't good transparency, and he was somewhat deceived by DTE's practices, maybe that in itself might be persuasive to the commission to act differently or to act a certain way in this case. So that's an example. Or I think Commissioner Peretick said that people are welcome to send letters. So maybe another idea for increasing public engagement is to have members write a letter, and that we can then submit that as a part of the formal record. Because once again, I sent out an email a couple of days ago about the testimony that John Richter submitted, and that is a part of the record. So maybe we can add to that testimony by submitting a series of affidavits or personal statements from members or from business members about how potentially this DTE case proposed changes would affect us. So that's one example of maybe increasing public engagement. A second way of engaging in public engagement that GLREA is moving to develop is the fact that we need to get more legislators that understand solar energy, understand geothermal energy, understand, as Marcia Curran has talked about, climate change and what does that mean for our economy and for our livelihoods in Michigan. And so we need to get behind candidates that are much more supportive of renewable energy and much more willing to take on the utilities or vote against utility interests. And so the Great Lakes Renewable Energy, we are in the process of creating a political action committee, and we're calling it Renewable Energy Voters of Michigan. Now, this will be legally a separate organization from GLREA because we are, in fact, a 501c3, which means we're a nonprofit educational organization, and we can only do a limited amount of lobbying, about 25% of our budget, and we can't endorse or get behind candidates. But we are allowed by law to create a separate entity, a political action committee, which is affiliated in a loose manner with GLREA, and then we can raise money into this political action committee, and then we can give checks to help candidates run for office that support our issues and our policies. Many organizations in Lansing have this kind of arrangement where they have their main organization, and I'm going to use Mark Cleavy's old organization, the Small Business Association in Michigan. They had their bread and butter organization, but then they also had a political action committee where they would raise money separately and support candidates financially who represented the interests of small business. And so after a couple of years of working with GLREA and working closely with the board, we have decided that we need to create our own political action committee to raise money to help elect candidates, like Representative Yusuf Rabi from Ann Arbor, who is in his third and final term. He's a terrific champion of renewable energy, but he hasn't been able to enact many bills because he needs more supporters, both Democrat and Republican. And this is a bipartisan thing. This is not a partisan thing. And so that's another form of public engagement that GLREA is going to be utilizing more in the near future. I want to bring up one final form of public engagement, and then I'm going to open up for questions or comments and get feedback from all of you. And that is that we need to help develop what I would consider the kind of like the public discussion out there within the media. We have newspapers, we have talk radio, and we have TV, public service channels on television, and of course we have social media. And GLREA does engage quite aggressively on Facebook and Twitter. We have our own Facebook page, the My Son Michigan Solar Users Network that John Sarver runs and promotes, and Mark Levy had some involvement in creating. But I also think that we need to do more letters to the editor. We need to submit more op-ed editorials in the newspapers within DTE and consumers' territories. And we need to get on talk radio, because talk radio is a terrific way of engaging the public about our issues. And talk radio is always looking for guest speakers to take up airtime, because they have to fill up every single second of the day, 7 days a week, with talk. And so what I'm looking for is to broaden our ability to engage the public through letters to the editor, op-ed editorials, and people willing to go on talk radio and talk about our issues. And so if any of you are interested in submitting letters to the editor or op-eds or being on talk radio, myself and our board members are more than happy to work with you to develop these skills and techniques to do this. But this is the third area of public engagement, which I think personally is very important for us to be promoting renewable energy and promoting policies that support the expansion of renewable energy. And frankly, we need to push back, because the utilities, in fact, they're advertising all the time on radio. I mean, you can barely listen to a Detroit Tigers baseball game and not hear countless ads by DTE about how green they are and how they're all about renewable energy. And at the same time, we all know that DTE is trying to eliminate renewable energy, or at least eliminate distributed renewable energy at the Public Service Commission level. And then, of course, they're trying to stop any effort to allow legislation in the Michigan legislature to lift the 1% cap or to enact a community solar law. And so we need to push back on DTE and consumers and the other utilities within the public as well. So those are three areas: submitting affidavits to get on record on these cases, establishing a political action committee, and they be much more aggressive in terms of media, in terms of shaping the political environment. So open up for questions and comments. We'll start with Mark Levy.
Yeah, John, I just wanted to remind everybody that you and I are putting on a clean energy seminar on July 14th on this subject of how to influence the process and shape the public policy. So it's a nuts and bolts thing about covering many of the things that John talked about, but also other tools and perspective. And so it's sort of we'll be doing this on that day. So we look forward to people participating.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you very much for reminding about that. And we will be sending out, as usual, emails to all of our members about that event. Ed Rivet.
Yeah, John, my question is, how have we been doing as GLREA in terms of growing the membership? Because it seems to me that we're at a time in the last couple of years, unless somebody else has data that I don't, that there's really a record number of residential customers that are getting solar and coming online, whether they're, using the DG and getting the current rate or using batteries, whatever. Do we have enough of a relationship established with all of the residential installers across the state, where as they're flipping the switch and turning another customer on, are we somehow able to get the GLREA organization in front of them so that they know they should join MySun? It just seems to me, if we haven't grown by a lot, then we should ask the very people who are putting these systems in to help them become our members, right?
No, absolutely, Ed. It's a great point. It's a great nudge. We have grown, relatively speaking, we have grown a lot. We've basically doubled our membership over the last 3 years. But
that's good. That's a good rate. Now we have to do it again in a year and a half, right?
That's right. And every time we have a board meeting, I always put in my my monthly report how we need to keep growing the organization, get more members, because that will increase our political our influence with both education and with legislators. And some of our business members are promoting GLREA when they signed up new customers, but the reason why I said that it's a good nudge to me is that we need to do a better job of getting our business members to promoting GLREA. And so I will be going back after this meeting, and we have a membership committee that we need to get going again with Mark Cleaving and Dave Conkle, and we'll start getting, and Ken Zabara of Harvest Energy, he is very willing and supportive of contacting all other solar businesses in Michigan and urging them to promote GLREA. And so I welcome your help as well, Ed. I know you've offered it in the past. And so we will push this.
Unfortunately, there's way too many witnesses on here for me to ever get out of it. But I guess in the presence of all these good friends, I will say I'll be on the committee, the membership committee. I shouldn't have volunteered myself just now, but I did. And now John Sarver's laughing, going, "We got him."
Sounds good. Mark, is your hand up, or are you just clapping? Okay.
I'm just clapping. Thank you, Ed. Thank you very much. You're singing my song. Yes. Welcome.
Are there any other comments or questions to what I talked about? I see that.
John, could you tell us the name of the political action committee that you're planning to create?
It's going to be called, Marcia, Renewable Energy Voters of Michigan. And I will be sending out an email once it's properly up and running. We've created the bank account. So if anybody wants to send checks to me, we can deposit them immediately. We are going to be installing software in order to help facilitate online contributions to this political action committee. And so, but you'll hear more information about this in the very near future.
It's a great idea. I'm so glad you're doing it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Marcia. I appreciate all your support. You've been a terrific member, and I really appreciate it. I see that Charles Morris has talked about how Michigan Interfaith Power and Light created a C4. We do have a C4 that's associated with GLREA. It's called Renewable Energy of Michigan. If you go on the Take Action link or a tab at the top of GLREA's website on the homepage, and you click on Take Action, that takes you directly to the C4 sister or brother organization of GLREA. And you can send 2 emails. It's front loaded. So you can send an email to the Public Service Commission that will be a part of the record there is a built-in message there that you can use, or you can tailor that message to something different if you want to. That's completely up to you. And then there's also a second email message that you can send, which goes to your state representative and your state senator, telling them about this DTE case and urging them to contact the Public Service Commission to urge them to reject DTE's proposal regarding the distributed generation. So Charles, we do have a C4. I'm glad to hear that Michigan Interfaith Power and Light has it, and that's terrific. I see that Denise Keel is willing to talk further with GLREA about public engagement ideas. Thank you very much. That sounds terrific. And again, congratulations on becoming the executive director of Climate Action Council. It's terrific. We've worked with them in the past, and we look forward to it with you in the future. Go ahead, Tom.
I was just curious. It may be not a possibility to do, but I wondered, we have just installed, and about 2 months ago now, our system. And, I like everybody. You look at daily now, you're watching every little tweak of the increase of production and so forth. And one of the things that dawns on me is although people do, sort of in a uncoordinated way, submit information and emails and on your website that produce how much people are getting, and putting some kind of example of their usage. And I just wondered if there has been ever interest in an accumulated data system that would collect on a monthly basis, or some kind of a strategy for accumulating information of those who's or how many people have it, what are they producing totally, and just to show the impact of this as it's growing. We have information now that I never expected would be very useful or very having a major impact. We kind of put our system in. Alyssa and I will say differently on this, but about my side of it was, I've always been interested and involved in environmental things, so I wanted to do it as the right thing to do. But it turns out that it's cut huge amounts of our energy bill in just a couple of months. And that is information that we ought to share among all of the people who have it.
And what we're giving back to DTE.
Yeah, Tom, I think it's an interesting idea. I don't know whether we currently have the capabilities of having some type of running aggregator on our website to all people that have installed solar and how much solar energy they're generating. It's something to think about for down the road. But I do want to share with you that every year, usually it's in early February, the Public Service Commission does put out a report about the current status of renewable energy in Michigan, where they release publicly up to that, prior to I'm not sure when the cutoff date is before they publish a report, but it's for the previous year, and then it adds up all the previous years of all the increased solar and wind and in methane digesting, all the forms of renewable energy in Michigan. And you can, if you look at all the various February reports that are released every year, you can see how over the years, how the growth of renewable energy has taken place in Michigan, both at the small scale level of homeowners and small business, but also in terms of utility scale, how that's grown as well. And then the other interesting data that this report provides is how the cost of solar and the cost of renewable energy has decreased over the same number of years, particularly as compared to coal and nuclear and even natural gas for that matter. So there is that information available. Whether there is another way of presenting it on the GLREA website, I think is something we should think about and maybe consider. Diane?
Hi. I'm just struck, Tom, by that testimonial you just gave. And I'm thinking what we should perhaps be doing is having some place on our website or on my son where we can collect these testimonials and have them there for everybody to read, so that more and more people, especially as we're trying to grow this membership, more and more people have that chance to tell each other. So I don't know if it's my son or GLREA that's more appropriate, but that was a great testimony right there, and especially the contrast between you and your wife on who wanted what, and you both got what you wanted, right? So good news. Thanks for sharing. Let's look at how we can get that written down and send it in to us, and a picture and more of our information out for others. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to wrap this up, and with this, I want to respond to something that Dale Klein just put in the chat. Dale Klein talked about how we need to get rid of Joe Bellino. I don't know if you all know who Joe Bellino is, but he is a state representative from the Monroe area, and he is the perfect example of everything that's either it's bad about politics, and a great example about why GLREA needs to step up with public engagement as well as this political action committee. According to Dale is saying that Lee mentioned it, Andre, I'm sure. Anyway, my point is this, that Joe Bellino is the chairman of the House Energy Committee, and he is sitting on some very important bills that we think we have the votes. If you would schedule it for a vote of the committee, we think we would win the majority of votes to pass it out of committee, and then it would go to the House floor. And we think, frankly, that there's bipartisan support for expanding, getting rid of the 1% cap and for enacting community solar. But Joe Bellino is not holding a vote because I think he knows that if he held a vote, he would lose. And Joe Bellino lives, his district, his state representative district is in the Monroe area. And DTE, of course, has a huge power plant in Monroe. And they provide, I think it's, last time I read, like 50% of all the taxes for the city of Monroe. So DTE has a lot of influence on Joe Bellino. And that's why Joe Bellino is, in fact, the chairman of the House Energy Committee.
The chairman.
Because,
mistake.
I'm sorry, Marcia? Anyway, so we need to get more involved in politics as well as public engagement to get more of our friends on the House Energy Committee and the Senate Energy Committee, and also to work with the Speaker of the House to make sure that when there's a new session, a new 2-year session, that they appoint someone to be chair of the House Energy Committee who is supportive of renewable energy and is not willing to kowtow to the utilities and everything. So that is something that Lee and Dale have pointed out is very important, and I absolutely agree. Jay, I'm going to give you the last comment before I wrap it up. Go ahead, Jay.
Okay, just want to go and let folks know that your solar production and in some cases even your consumption numbers can be shared publicly through a website called pvoutput.org. pvoutput.org. In my case, I'm running Enphase, and Enphase is in cooperation with PV Output. I merely go and click a few buttons on the on my Enphase account, and they will gladly share my data, which is collected once every 15 minutes, and they will upload that automatically to PV Output. I shared the link in the chat, both just the pvoutput.org website, as well as the link to my own personal data collection information. So it's all out there public. people do this all over the world. It's amazing the amount of data that gets collected from everywhere.
Sounds great. Thank you very much, Jay. Really appreciate it. So it's 8:30. We scheduled this event to last an hour and a half, and so we're right on time. So I'm going to wrap this up. I just want to thank all of you for joining us this evening. I hope you enjoyed our presentation by Commissioner Katherine Peretick. I want to thank Rob Rapson for inviting her and for introducing her. I think it's even though Commissioner Peretick was unable to answer specific questions about this rate case, I think it's very important that we build a relationship with each of the commissioners so they understand about what the work that GLREA does and understand how important these issues are to our membership and to the broader public. We had Chairman Dan Scripps speak a couple of years ago, and that was a very important presentation as well. And at some point, we hope to get Commissioner Tremaine Phillips to also speak. So I just want to thank all of you for joining us this evening. I want to thank all of you for being great members of GLREA. As always, if you have any questions or comments, you should always feel free to call me or send me an email. You can obviously contact the board members. We have an incredible board of 16, I think, at this point. They all bring a lot of talent and a lot of expertise. It's a working board, so don't hesitate to contact them as well. And I want to thank the board members for all their hard work and for supporting me and working with me as a working partnership. So with that, I'm going to call it an evening, and I hope you all have a very nice evening and stay cool. And thank you once again.